Welcome to a new episode of Talking Gods. Sorry, American Gods. First, I'd like to apologize off my game, so if things seem a little unorganized and scattered, that's my fault, my bad. Try to keep it together here. Hopefully, with my two co-hosts, Yardley and Kinte, we can make some sense out of this last episode. So I'll start. Hey, Kinte, what's going on?
Hey, did you introduce me? You were breaking up a little bit, so I didn't.
I didn't introduce you. I introduced Kinte, but hey, Yardley, you're there. How's it going?
Yeah, hey, I'm doing too good. Hopefully your week will wrap up on a much higher note, but everything is well on this side, and I look forward to talking about this episode. I only saw the episode once, so I might need a little assistance as well.
This was definitely a good one. And to that end, if I start breaking up audio-wise, please let me know. I know this seems to be an issue for some reason, so just let me know. Did we get Kinte back? Kinte,
no,
there?
I didn't go anywhere. And
I introduced you and it disappeared, so sorry about that.
No excuse, Jen. When you're a god, you're supposed to be always on point. And see, that's why the new generation is turning to the new gods, because you old gods are and your slower internet and bad weeks and stuff like that.
You see, that is the problem. I didn't offer the technical boy this. Normally, I have it ready to go. I'm so sorry. So, yeah.
Don't worry, I'm in the same boat.
Just as one quick jump ahead shout out, I almost stopped watching American Gods when Laura burned the library at Alexandria.
I know,
for a second time.
Oh,
I actually all turned it off. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Well, I promise we'll get to that, but yeah, I just had to mention that. Okay, so I don't know if you guys, but I did look up the ratings. Poor Star, but we having some serious meetings behind.
You're
breaking up pretty bad. I didn't hear anything you just said.
Okay. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. Hold on for a second, and we're gonna move so that we can be in a slightly different spot. Seems like this spot causes problems. I was saying that the ratings were really bad again.
Yeah,
did you guys see that?
I had actually saw a link or something. Oh, actually, you posted it in the in the show notes. So yeah, it did dip a little bit there, and I don't know what the people at Stars are talking about. I mean, obviously they have faith, I guess, in the product because it got renewed for a third season. But when you look at these numbers, it's just I don't know. I mean, I could totally see them getting sneaky and cutting the budget again. What do you think, Kinte?
Yeah, I agree. Wow, I'm looking at the ratings and it dipped again too for episode 3. Wow, that's not good, and it's by far the lowest of the show's of the show's runtime.
Although I will say,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, what I was going to say is.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead.
Gotta love the time delay.
I'm gonna go ahead and go real quick. When the hiatus between the last time that we the first season, how long was it? It was over a year, right? It was over a year, or am I just?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was almost 2 years. We're almost at the 2-year mark.
I mean, I think a lot of that is the problem as far as the numbers are concerned, as well. I mean, we do live in a out of sight, out of mind society, and there's so many options for you to choose from that I thought that it was kind of foolish of them to be gone that long, let alone not necessarily promote the show that I think it deserves. So I mean, some of this is their own doing.
It is. And I think also one of the big things that's happening is the show, because it has changed the both the showrunners and sort of the technical stuff behind the scenes, it is creating a jarring experience for the people who are watching. So as a result, we don't just have sort of the pause in the continuity. We have a brand new continuity to get used to. Well, that doesn't make any sense. We have a brand new production look and feel to get used to. And that, I think, was off-putting to the people who first started. And then, let's face it, it did sort of start out, I think it started out good, but I think it started out a little slow. And maybe that's not what people were looking for. On the other hand, this episode ties together a lot of stuff that I was hoping that we would sort of get to in a roundabout way, where they are paying attention to characters now sort of in their own right and not just making them feel like they are accessories of Odin, of Mr. Wednesday, which feels really good. But at the same time, I think it might be a bit hard for viewers to sort of catch up to where they are. I will say, like you said, I give Starz a lot of credit for sticking with it, announcing a third season before the second season even ended. And I think they've got a lot of work to do to get viewers back in. They've got a lot of downtime work to do real heavy promotion of this, because they're still not doing it. Not that I see. Do you guys see that?
Not at all. If I didn't know, I wouldn't have known that the show was not even back on.
And I don't think that most people follow those, the pages are always like, kind of occupying the websites either. So I think that what they have to do, I mean, the only reason why I know what's going on is, of course, Talking American Gods podcast, the page and the group, or, I know about it through that. And I guess by default, with the algorithm that they use for Facebook, every blue moon, I'll see something in my news feed about American Gods. But once again, that's probably just based off of I was following it, but I had made it where I would you have the option to where you can see something less or whatever. I just think by default it pops it up in there every now and then. So they've got a huge job to do. And because even when you read a lot of people's comments, a lot of them either were complaining about the hiatus or, the feel of the show right now. So I think when you've been gone that long, you damn sure better do something to hook girls.
Well, and they haven't taken advantage at all of doing the kind of stuff that smart shows do on social media, where they get the cast back and forth and banter, where they do some things that really create buzz. One of the shows that Kinte and I did podcast for last year, called The Mayans, did a great job. Live hosted events on Twitter, answer your questions. They did it's more. American Gods has to be more than just a passive show to watch. It's got to be an experience. And I find the more that I talk to people that are inside of that group, the more that is sort of what they're looking for, right? They read either American Gods or started watching it because they wanted something different than just your standard everyday kind of drama. And if Starz doesn't kind of step it up a little bit, man, this is a little bit worrisome. But in hindsight, hey, we've got what we've got. And I will say that this episode was pretty good. Some people who watch this show with me, who have been pretty disillusioned since the beginning of the season, said that this episode renewed a little bit of faith in bringing back some of the good stuff that they felt like American Gods had before. So before I start with the sort of the breaking down some of the mechanics, I just wanted to get some opinions from you guys about how you felt about this episode and whether you thought it was better or in the same ballpark or worse. Or how about you, Kinte? What do you think?
Real quick before I get into that, there's been several people who I know who've never watched the show, who saw that we were doing the podcast and said, you know what, let me give this show a shot. and they started watching the show, and they're like, "Man, I love this show. Why didn't I know about this show from from 2 years ago?" So, and they're like currently breezing through the first season. So it does. People can watch the show and start liking it. Now, this episode was very good. I thought it was probably the best show of the season, the best episode of the season. I really enjoyed it. And I know this is something that Yardley talked about last week, but when we thought that what was he, the caretaker? Is it his character?
Death.
Mr. Ebis.
Yeah. Like I love that character, and
Mr. Ebis and Mr. Jackal. We didn't see Mr. Jackal this time. We just saw Mr. Ebis.
Right, and he's a great actor. That guy. I really enjoyed that. When he came into this episode and his part as well, and I really think that it gives another depth to this series. So I thought that was really good. I really liked Laura in this episode as well, and of course, had me cracking up was Mad Sweeney through the. There was some funny ass Mad Sweeney scenes in this episode as well. And you know what? I actually really enjoyed Shadow in this episode. I thought I really liked his character, probably more than I had in this season, in this particular episode. So it was, I enjoyed it. And, of course, Mr. Wednesday is great as always.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was a little bit better than the last one episode. The only reason why I'll say that it was better for me personally was just because there's a lot of things that happen in the TV show that didn't necessarily happen the same way in the books. But there's something that happened in this episode that damn sure isn't in the books. And for me, I was kind of surprised, and I'm pretty sure that at some point y'all will get to it a little bit later on in the show. But I definitely thought it was a little bit better. I agree with Kinte as far as you got some classic Mad Sweeney scenes, and it actually made me a little bit more curious, especially with the introduction of new media and things like that. So I'm curious about where they're going to take it even more based off this episode, but I don't think it was light years ahead of like the episode that preceded it.
Well, yeah, you're right. I don't think it's light years ahead, but I do think that it is that they're, let's see, how could I say this? It's a little bit like shaky production starts shaky and then it begins to shore itself up. And I think that they're beginning to shore themselves up, at least in terms of doing a broader introduction of characters standing on their own. And also, I think this episode was maybe a little bit more memorable than other episodes. It's because we finally get to see Shadow, basically, pardon the pun, outside of the shadow of Mr. Wednesday. Mm-hmm. We get to see Shadow sort of doing shadow things, which was really interesting in its own right. And it kind of gives some depth to Shadow that I think we sort of need in order to go forward, because otherwise he just feels like Wednesday's yes man. Did you guys notice that too?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Why this was like an episode where I actually liked Shadow a lot.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
And did you feel the same way about Mr. Wednesday and Laura? I found that pairing to be very interesting. I was wondering what you guys thought about that in particular.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that it was fun. That was one of the main reasons, like how the episode closed out. Some of the interactions that they had right before the end of the episode, I thought was great. And I do think that they're a great pairing, because I think at different points in this episode, we know one of the things that the gods want and need to flourish is for people to have faith and to believe in them. And then it's almost like there were certain points towards the end of the episode where he kind of flipped the scripts, trying to say that he was the only one who had faith in Shadow when he was talking to to Laura to Laura Moon before they bailed out on him. So he's really good at flipping the scripts, but he made some awesome points at the end of the episode. Before when he made poor dead Laura cry. There were some revelations that she had to kind of deal with herself. Dealing with Wednesday at the end of the episode. But I do like that pairing. But apparently, I hope not. But it seems like they're kind of separating away from each other themselves. So I'm really curious to see how Laura gets out of that prediction.
Well, I'm not really sure that that's actually the end all for that either. I mean, it seems like everybody has to go through their moment of disbelief in order to regain their belief and their trust in whatever it is that they're going to trust in. And every single one of them has to get tested. In fact, in one of the show notes that I wrote, it was sort of an observational piece. I wrote that it was really interesting that the way that Wednesday described Laura and her coin needing to be recharged, as in her luck was running out. And the reason that I thought that that was so interesting was because we don't generally tend to think of luck as being something linear, right? It's just happenstance. It's just sort of random events. And yet for Laura, and I think even for Matt Sweeney, it does feel very much like luck is linear. And so if we start from the moment that the train crashed, which I really do want to at least just touch on, and the events that unfolded after the train crash, it feels to me like what they're trying to say here is there is something bigger happening with Laura than perhaps we even understand in the context of the story, something different than the Mad Sweeney coin, something clearly that has been happening for a long time. I mean, Mr. Wednesday pointed to it a little bit by saying that Laura was Laura was the puppet that he had basically been pulling the strings for a really long time. That seemed pretty consequential. The fact that he knew that she tried to off herself with a bug spray, big shout out to last season, was pretty big. I feel like they did a good job of pulling that thread, but I'm curious about whether you guys think that aspect lends more to the Shadow story or whether it could have been told without it. Because I'm on the fence with it.
I'm on the fence as well. I mean, I like the character of Laura on the TV show. But as Kinte was referring to earlier, I think we got a little bit more of Shadow. It became a more relatable and likable character, mainly because we got to know him a little bit more and detached from Mr. Wednesday. So when it comes to Laura Moon and what they're doing, I'm really like I'm dying to know what the hell they're gonna do with her, because for me, I kind of found her character, as much bullshit as she's done, I found her character to be more sympathetic, and I kind of wanted to root for her to do something when there was a clock, when it was seeming like she was breaking down. I just felt like there was like a timer on it. And now that she's recharged and there isn't any timer, now I'm like, well, what the fuck are you going to do with her now? I'm just like, what? Right. What? I mean, what is it going to be more story for her and less for Shadow? I just don't know. So, I'm going to let the next episode play out. I just want to get a better idea of where they're going to go with her, because I don't know. It's just something about the fact that, there was always that doom and gloom about, she didn't have much time, and she didn't have much time, and she doesn't even really know what her purpose is. You know what I mean? So,
that brings up an interesting point, right? Because Mr. Wednesday did say in the when they were going to find Argus that revenants tend to have a single purpose, and I don't think that was an accident. I don't think that was like an accident of writing. It felt very purposeful and driven, and so what that purpose is, I don't think it's a purpose that Laura understands. And I certainly don't understand it myself. I have a hard time with this story arc. One, I think because it's not anywhere near anything that's in the book, but two, because it feels very much to me like they are trying to pull Laura into the story in a way that is so different from the way that I think the story would have gone if they had just retold the story as American Gods, and I can't quite figure out what their end game is. So there's some good potential. There's definitely some good potential. I do like the fact, though, and I think I got to say this because it is kind of important. It's really hard to watch the steady decomposition of a walking corpse on the screen, knowing how far there still is basically to go, because there's a bit to go, a bit of the journey is still left. Knowing that Laura then basically by the end wouldn't have any suitable purpose. There wouldn't be, I think it would be less enjoyable overall if Laura really did sort of decompose down, like you said, with the ticking clock. Because I think in the end, what would have happened, the train crash ripped her apart. Anything big that would happen in a battle between the gods would surely tear Laura apart, right? Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but I mean, a fully charged Laura shouldn't be able to kick a god's ass. So I don't know, you know what I mean? So I don't really know if that makes a difference. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
But the thing is, we don't know what that really does, right? I mean, Wednesday is as much as Inktomi, as much as Mr. Nancy. I consider them all to be tricksters in their own right. So we don't know. He says that it recharges the coin, right? We don't actually know what that fully means.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it could mean that Laura goes back to being actually human for a while. Although, I mean, like maybe she loses her super strength. Who knows? I think you're right. We have to wait and see what happens in the next episode.
I mean, I'm gonna say, yeah, definitely. I'm curious, very curious to see where they're gonna go with it. But for me, I don't think that a person like Mr. Wednesday would ever put Laura in a position where she could really do anything about the things that he's trying to do. So I do think that there's a little bit of fuckery going on with what Wednesday did.
Yeah.
I mean, there definitely has to. He doesn't strike me as someone who would provide someone with the opportunity to have more power than I think he would want them to have. So there's obviously a purpose connected to Shadow with him doing what he's done, but you know, who knows?
Well, I do think it was pretty clever of Mr. Wednesday to use Laura to kill Argus. I think it was clear that Wednesday couldn't kill Argus not because he didn't know how, but because he didn't want, basically, Mr. Wednesday didn't want to draw sides on it. He didn't want to alienate any of the old gods or any of the new gods, but simply by making that choice. I feel like that was a conscious choice to put Laura in that position. I mean, that it didn't seem to me like Mr. Wednesday was just saying, "Hey, I can't kill this god."
No,
did it seem like that to you?
Like that, and I do like that character. Those eyeballs was really creepy. So that was something where I wasn't even paying attention to anything else except waiting to see where an eyeball popped.
So let's talk about that for a second. That scene, that's our first full, or not full, but our bigger introduction to what media might be after. New media might be after. And so I have to ask the obvious, first of all. What was your assessment of how they played out that sex scene between Fiber Optic Man and New Media?
I don't even really know I don't know what to make out of that, in general, but I will say this. At first, I kind of scoffed at New Media. And then a split second later, I was like, okay, I understand what they're doing. Old media's gone and the new media, social media, and, all of that type of stuff. So after my initial, I want old media back. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I get what they're doing. So I do felt like that character worked after, a few minutes of aggravation that I didn't, have old media. But yeah, that whole scene, I really didn't know what to make of it. Cause I was like, for me, I think I laughed through the whole scene. I was like, well, why the hell, what is their point? Like, I didn't really get it. I mean, I think part of it was probably, showing how extreme some of our new media can be and things like that. But overall, I'll just say the new media is cool. I have a feeling that new media is going to be a thorn in a lot of people's side in these upcoming episodes. But I thought it was pretty. Oh yeah.
Oh, much like actual new media.
Absolutely. Kinte, I mean, were you feeling the character? I mean, I don't really, I could totally see you laughing as well during that scene.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt her character very much. So, and she did it. She had more than a thorn in her side. But I really think that I liked her. Like, first of all, she's pretty cute, and so I'm interested to see where that's going with her character. And she looks like she is a total wild card. So you don't really know, what side she's on. Well, actually, we know what side she's on, her own side. So, it's going to be very interesting how she fits into all of this. But I really am very interested in how it's going to play out with her. And, I like old media. Obviously, it was Gillian Anderson, but,
I liked the idea that Technology Boy foiled the attempt, and the reason that I liked that was because it felt to me like Technology Boy was looking for a win in the plus side between him and Mr. World, and by pulling media away from whatever was going on, it did seem like Technology Boy didn't understand it at first and then understood what was really going on. And that to me seemed also consequential, but I really liked that. I liked the way that it became a win for Technology Boy to pull her away as opposed to it being a win any other way. Does that, I think that makes, I think the point is that this isn't, you're right, new media is a wild card, but there's something more going on here where the old gods and are both trying to treat each other with a sense of not indifference and not reverence, and it's not just traditions, because we heard Mr. World say to Technology Boy, the reason you're going to go to Argus is because of tradition. But it feels to me like there is something else happening between the gods. They're trying to portray it, where the gods themselves treat each other differently than maybe mere petty mortals. Right? Does that make sense?
It does to me.
No,
I was impressed by that delivery.
What are y'all thinking about the character of Technical Boy now? I find myself liking that character less than I did last season. Like I never would have thought that after this episode I would be more of a fan.
I never liked him
than Technical Boy, but you never liked him, Jen?
No, I never liked him. I always thought that, and I think the reason I didn't like Technology Boy is because I understood, or at least I felt like I understood from a very, from the lowest possible denominator, that Technology Boy is probably the worst kind of gunk that you want in the machine, because because without Technology Boy, without technology as a whole, that is basically what separates the old gods from the new gods.
Yep, cosign.
So, and I think we saw that in real time, right? With the crow, with the raven making its way into the drone and taking it down, right? I mean, the clash of those two worlds could not have been a better on-screen, just direct. Here's exactly what it is in black and white.
Actually, you made me remember that was definitely one of my favorite little shots of the episode. Yeah, that was dope.
So as the episode moved forward, obviously Shadow met Sam Crow, and Sam Crow didn't give Shadow any information at all about who she was or what she was. And I was wondering what you guys thought of that character.
The scene of Shadow getting with that character, that was in the books, because I think I remembered it, but it wasn't.
It wasn't quite done the same way,
Well,
but it was pretty close.
Gosh, it's been a couple, 2 or 3 years since I read the book, but if I'm not mistaken, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this, Jen, I think we're going to see that character again, because she had another part at the end of the book as well, right? I'm just kind of, when they got to the yeah. Am I tripping?
Yeah.
I mean, she showed up more than once in the book, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll see Sam.
I thought that the character in the introduction, you have it in the show notes about the meeting of that character in Shadow at the store. And I wanted to know, like, what the hell would you have done, Kinte, if this person tried to put you on blast when you're trying to get your hustle on?
So hold on a second. Kinte, you can answer in one sec, but I just want to say that this is like such a huge shout out. Clearly, somebody in the show watched Tatum O'Neal and what's his name? I forgot his name. Oh my gosh, sorry. The old gods are leaving me at the moment. But there is a movie called Paper Moon where they run this really similar kind of scam that involves something, but it's basically the money scam the scene felt directly taken out of that movie. So go ahead. What did you think?
If she tried to stop my hustle, I'd have been pissed. Like, girl, I'm trying to make this money. What are you talking about? and that girl and the woman, she was definitely going for it, So, but no, I wouldn't have liked that at all. But
at least he knows he could go back, Kinte, and probably pull it off a second time.
Oh yeah, he can definitely hustle that chick. It's what I think of when I see her Sam Crow, Jen, Sons of Anarchy.
What? Right.
That was the name of
Took me a second.
The biker gang was Sam Crow, but I liked her character. She was a very interesting character. I mean, you knew right away, kind of, that she was gonna. I mean, obviously, I didn't read the book, but you knew that she wasn't just a happenstance character. That she was somebody that was gonna figure into this more, and I felt like their interaction was key to Shadow. Like, not just from a story point of view, but from a really development point of view of Shadow, because like once again, you saw another side of Shadow in that, and right. I really think that the dialogue between the two characters really lend itself to really opening up his character more. So,
well, and the way that Shadow behaves with people that he doesn't know is clearly very different from the way that he behaves with people that he does know. So it's nice to see him in the element of, I don't know who you are. This is my this is my public face. And then over the course of the episode, as he sort of got to know who she was, some of those barriers kind of came back down again, and you got to see the real Shadow again. By the time that they got to Cairo, it really felt pretty organic, that whole interaction between Shadow and Sam Crow. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel... and just the way that Sam reacted to Shadow when Shadow was surrounded by all the little lights, when she said, "Friends of yours," that was actually quite... I liked that. I liked it a lot, because it felt like, is she in on it? Does she know something? I liked it. I thought it was really good. And I'm sure that you both noticed the crows that were her tattoos, right? as she talked about being
I
a
didn't notice the
two-spirit.
tattoo. Where was it? It was on her neck? Okay.
It was on her arm, and there's two. They looked a whole lot like Mr. Wednesday's. Maybe a little bit different, but they definitely had that same look to them. So I thought that was actually kind of cool too. You know, before I forget, there were so many little details in this episode that I feel like they started paying attention to again. And I know that I wrote it in the show notes, but I feel like I should say it out loud too. There's the scene where Salim and the Jinn basically are leaving the Corn Palace, right? And in the parking lot is written the famous words for American Gods that we see every time they sort of either inject a new myth or tell us about a myth that just happened. And it says, "Somewhere in America." And I loved that because it felt like they were trying to go not back, they were trying to reconstruct what I feel like we missed in the first couple episodes. Even Mr. Ebis telling us the story of Io and Argus and Hera and what happened. That little narrative was remember how I was talking last week about how I missed that Somewhere in America piece? Yeah, apparently I was praying to the right gods this week because my wish got granted. And we have that nice little, it wasn't the perfect vignette. It didn't do exactly what I liked for them to do, but it did at least bridge a nice gap. So I thought that was good. So along those same lines, again, I'm going to go back to the Argus thing because I feel like that was really important. As they're going up through the building and they get off of the elevators and they see all of the different instances of Argus before he came back. Did you guys like that? Did you think that was a good representation?
Yes. Oh yeah.
You did?
I didn't have a problem with it.
Did you feel like you understood that he was being resurrected at all these different points?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason that I ask is because that was a huge thing that people didn't seem to understand. I mean, I'm glad that you did. I should have known that you were smarter than your average bear, but you know, sometimes
was
takes
that like
a little
something that a lot of people were like, they weren't. I mean, I didn't. You know, I mean, it wasn't like a. It wasn't something where I was like, oh man, I couldn't get it.
Yeah, what they didn't understand was, okay, so Wednesday and Laura go up the stairs, which is the reason that they went up the stairs is because so they could basically leave at every floor to look for Argus, right? Technology Boy and New Media didn't do that. They've gotten to the elevator. So they went straight to the source, if you will. But Mr. Wednesday and Laura, as they leave on each floor to basically give a sacrifice, a lot of people didn't understand what the significance behind all of that was, or because the big question was, well, why didn't they just get on the elevator too? What was with all of the stops? Why did it matter? You know, Technology Boy and New Media didn't do that. Why did Wednesday and Laura have to do that? And so that was the question. The question was, did you understand the significance of it, or was that not so clear? Because for a lot of people,
which one you came to that conclusion? Was that like some topics of conversation that was going on in the group?
It wasn't just the group. It was also a big Twitter thing. And there are some other groups where people, especially Reddits, where people are talking about American Gods. And that was just a huge one. It went on forever and ever. Mm-hmm. So, and I think, sometimes when shows get meta for the sake of being meta, it can be really difficult to sort of pull out sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And you want to assign meaning to sort of every little rock and tree. And I think that's kind of what was happening. There wasn't, I just think that sometimes American Gods can get a little too into itself and people start misinterpreting things.
I remember,
I'm glad that we all understood. That's awesome.
The show Lost, you know how everybody would always, everything would get analyzed. And I remember there's one thing where there was something in the background and people were saying, oh, that's the spirit of something or whatever. And then they had to actually come out. This was so funny. The producers had to come out and say, no, that wasn't anything. That was actually a mistake. It was actually like the shadow of a grip or something. Because people were like making it into something, and they had to come out and say, no, it was just a grip. It was a mistake on our part.
I guess we're a little bit too thirsty.
Right.
So I'm gonna just throw this out there and ask you guys to tell me what you think. What did you think of Mad Sweeney this episode, just at large?
Yeah, I wish it made me wish Mad Sweeney had his own.
Right?
Honestly, I started to dig that character more and more. I think my favorite part was when Laura was getting put back on the table, and then he was about to call her a cunt or something, and then she knocked him across the room, and he's like, "There she is." And I was like, "Yeah," but I mean, how can you not? I don't know. I almost feel like how can you not like Mad Sweeney?
He is such a lovable. When he's down on his luck, I feel like it actually makes him more
and that's
adorable.
the thing. I'm wondering, like,
is it supposed to be though?
You said adorable? Oh, down on the luck, yeah.
Down on his luck or adorable. He's lost his lucky coin. He can't be anything.
Yeah,
but
and
it's
also one of those things where I'm even more curious about what they're going to do with him, because, like, when you look at the character, especially based off of last season, for the life of me, I just don't know why when Laura, maybe a couple of points in the last couple of episodes, she's been totally vulnerable for him to get his coin back. Like, you know what I mean? Like but he doesn't.
Right.
So I'm wondering season Laura, or what does he know? Or I don't know, or maybe he just has a feeling or has faith that something's going to happen. I'm just wondering what the hell does he see to for him not to take his luck back. So I don't know.
Okay, well, there is a small answer in there. I don't know if it's the complete answer, but the small answer is he's looking for some kind of restitution isn't the right word, but a kind of he wants to make up for what he did, because remember in the last season, he basically came to the conclusion that this is what he had to do in order. He had to like reconcile and set the book straight in order to keep going the way that he was. So I think that's the short answer.
Didn't he make reference? I think that he kind of referenced it was a penance for something in like one of the last couple of episodes.
Yeah. And we think that it has something to do with Mr. Wednesday, right? Because it was penance for doing something with Mr. Wednesday.
Now it's all coming.
Yeah. Because that does see, this is what happens when you miss a year or two out of a show. It's hard to remember all the little nuances. But it also is one of the reasons I think that Mr. Wednesday doesn't just basically up and, get rid of Mad Sweeney too. Because why is Mr. Wednesday letting Mad Sweeney tag along on all of his stuff if, all he ever says is, I can't believe you still trust him, and, don't you know that he's just a shyster and a grifter, and, Mr. Wednesday's got to have a reason for keeping the guy around. So, okay, other than the fun stuff with Mad Sweeney, which really was fun, my favorite was the dog in the car. I have to admit that really did make me laugh. Finally everything is going his way. He even gets a keychain that's got a Celtic cross on it. Oh yeah, things are fun. And then there's a giant.
I would have got the hell up out of there. I'd have got out of there, man.
I would have told.
Yeah, that was Yeah, I love though when the dog. For a minute, the dog kind of just looks at him like, "Oh, okay, well maybe he's nope."
Even more genius was just the fact that was why the door was unlocked. That's why I was dying laughing. It's almost like one of those things, like, when I was younger, I think I saw someone that played this out. There used to be this dog at this gate, and every day we'd walk by the gate and it would yell at us, and we'd kick the gate and piss it off even more, until that one day the dog was just walking with us down the side of the gate and the gate was open. It was like, oh man, it was bound to happen. But yeah, actually, now that you said the dog, I'm not saying that dog scene beat the scene where Laura just totally mashed him across the room, but that was definitely a classic scene.
Yeah.
It was memorable.
Anytime that Laura roughs
sure.
him up, it's gold.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the reasons why it was so hard to see Laura at the end look so confused, because so far, other than in the flashback scenes where we know that she was really struggling with a lot of why am I here, what am I doing, what's happening, she's been really strong. She's been incredibly organized and single-minded. And to see her so just out of sorts after Wednesday bows to her and says, okay, goodbye, this is it. It's been a pleasure. That was really disconcerting, I think. Did you guys feel the same way, or did you feel like maybe Laura finally realized that Wednesday was right, that she was just being self-serving?
Yes, I believe it. I mean, I believe it. What did he say that you felt like wasn't true, though? Everything that he said seemed to be.
Well, right. That's the thing, right? I mean, let's not forget how Laura died, right? Laura didn't just die in a regular car accident. Laura had been cheating with Shadow's best friend and died in a car accident with him. That's pretty big. So it's not like, Laura doesn't get to just walk around skating as if she's just the dutiful, happy wife. I think that's a big thing. I wanted to ask one quick question of you, Yardley, before I know you have to leave. And that is, in terms of how this episode unraveled, did you feel like the introduction of sort of the breezing in and breezing out of some of the old gods who are helping Mr. Wednesday, did you feel like that was effective? Just from a narrative standpoint, because I have some ideas about
I think that it's effective,
like Mr. Inktomi and
well, I mean, do I think it's as effective with them kind of being mixed up in the story more? Like, what do you mean effectiveness of?
Well, do you think it's hard for audiences to sort of get characters that breeze in and out of the story, and then we have to go back and remember?
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, oh my gosh, I definitely don't think that benefits viewers. I don't, because we kind of spoke on this earlier. I think when you've been gone so long, I think that whatever you do has to pop and keep people's attention and keep them engaged and, just kind of keep them busy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think, and even though there have been some great things about this season, and you know what, I'm going to have faith and believe that, later on in the season it's going to get even better and better. But I think that this is the type of show, especially with the break, I think you have to be a little bit more busy to keep people engaged.
Yeah, I do too. Although I will say, just from a total perspective, that I do like the fact that they're using Arjun and Salim and some of the other characters, even Mr. Nancy and Mr. Ibis, to pull together all of those threads so that we really are only looking at a core cast instead of having all the gods come in all the time and then us having to are. So to that end, I think they're trying at least. So, all of that, I really did like this episode. I thought it was really good.
Well, what would you rank it 1 to 10? You give it like an 8 or a 9?
I think I would give it. Let me put it into perspective. Last week, I would have given that episode a solid 7.7. Really give this episode a good 8.2. I feel like it's moved up enough in the storytelling and also in just the faithful remembrance of what American Gods was trying to do before. I feel like they're trying to get back to it. So,
yeah, I agree. It's not American Frauds now; it's American Gods again.
They're moving. They're definitely moving in the right direction. I know it must be pretty difficult for them to get everything back on board, but it does feel like they're moving in the right direction. So I'm glad about that. So. I guess we're going to wrap. And first of all, I just wanted to say thank you guys. I love just this hour of the week to talk about American Gods as it happens. It really is. I love deconstructing the show. It's one of my most favorite shows to dig into and decide whether things are real, not real, meta, not meta, mythical, not mythical. It's just fun. I have a really good time. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And so I'll start with you, Yardley. Tell us how we can get you on social media.
Follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
And Kinte, how can new media come find you?
You can find me at Kinte F on Twitter, Kinte Ferguson on Instagram, and of course, indyradio.org. That's INDY radio.org.
And you can find me at Following Bliss1 on Twitter, and my websites, criticallaughs.com and moviesmakethemeal.com. So we will see you next week.
Peace.